Discovering Kazakhstan is Jonathan Newell's unbiased view on culture and the mode of life of Kazakh people, on amazing landscapes and architectural masterpieces all over Kazakhstan.
Today on Discovering Kazakhstan, we're going to have a look at the arts and crafts of the country, and of course those special artisans who made all that possible over the centuries. Well, it all started, of course, thousands of years ago, where these very talented people started making all of the things that were necessary in life for the Kazakh people, including things like this saddle, and of course for these times of war when Kazakhstan was fighting its invaders, the Jungars, etc. There are these beautiful kind of clothes that the women wore, and also which the men wore, of course. And of course we can't forget the wartime, the time when the Kazakh people had to fight their battles. We'll be looking at all of that in this program and showing you various different crafts from that era. Part of a craft exhibition taking place, this yurt is packed with exhibits from the Almaty Central Museum, which provides some insight to visitors of what Kazakhstan's past culture was like in terms of everyday way of life. Today we've come to the house of Inara, and she creates these beautiful products out of felt. And of course, Kazakhstan is widely known internationally for the quality of its felt and for the beauty of its felt products. And I just want to show you a few of the things that Inara does, and a few of the things that are created from felt and the variations that you can use with it. And I want to start with this here, which is used for a special ceremony in Kazakhstan for one-year-old children, their first steps into the world. And it's a very important ceremony for Kazakh people, and they attach a lot of grandeur to this event, and part of that is this carpet, if you like, or rug, on which the small child walks after its legs have been ceremoniously released. Well, it's made from pressed felt, which is this layer here, and there are different ways in which it can be built up into different layers, and Inara has created this 3D effect using cutouts of felt. She designs her own little pieces like this, colours them out on the felt, and then cuts it out, and then layers it up. Well, for such a grand ceremony, of course, this kind of very lustrous, beautiful, thin gold material is used, and then there's gold netting layered on top of it as well, which creates these beautiful patterns of light. It kind of plays with the light as it falls across it, so you can imagine if it's in sunlight or artificial light from different directions, it will catch it in different ways and shine in different ways like that. And then these patterns on top of that to give that kind of 3D relief. It's all then stitched together into one contiguous set of layers like that. It's very beautiful indeed. Now, we can see some of the materials that Inara uses here. All sorts of different coloured cottons, like these, beads, very heavy beads here, that can be used with there. These little pearly beads like that can be placed onto here, to create more variations, to give more depth to the design, and just to make it more fancy. You know, this is a very cheerful event. This is your child's first steps into life. A very happy ceremony, nothing dour about it, so put plenty of colour into it. But you know, tastes are different. Not everybody wants the same thing. Some people don't like to have flowery, colourful designs, lots of gold, that kind of thing. And so the materials that are used in this design can be changed very easily. We can see how this moves away like that, and you can see the different effect when it doesn't have the netting on it. There's the gold and that, and also you can take the gold away and just have one layer of felt on top of another layer of felt. You can imagine if, for example, one layer of felt is one colour, like black, another layer of felt is a different colour, like grey. You can imagine the kinds of effects and the kinds of colour patterns that can be built up there. Very interesting indeed. Well, I'll show you some of the other work that is done here, and you can see the effects of the colours that I spoke about here, with the pink and the white together, which is very effective, especially if you put that again onto the cream-coloured background of the felt. It really picks it out, and it looks very nice indeed. Well, this that I'm holding in my hands here is very interesting because it shows another aspect of this kind of material work. Here you can see that all of these details are padded. So inside of this, these parts have been first of all stitched together and then stuffed with material, so they're bunched up like that. So what is it exactly? Well, actually, it represents a saddleback that used to be used in the old days on horseback. So if you look at it like that, each one will go either side of the horse like that. Now, what's that bag used for? Well, it's part of the wedding ceremonies in Kazakhstan that these would be filled with gifts. So each side of the bag would contain gifts, jewellery, all sorts of things like that for the bride and for the groom, of course.
Inara represents a new generation of artisans working with felt, a traditional material in Kazakh history and one which is present everywhere, in people's homes and in the craft fairs with stalls containing many felt products.
I like these kind of craft fairs, you know, because you very often come across the real handicrafts of Kazakhstan, and this lady's stall here at this particular handicraft fair has got all sorts of different things that are all handmade and all represent the old style Kazakh culture. And there's everything here from these yurts, which are very beautiful, and you can see even inside the yurt there's the dastarkhan, and there's other elements of the yurt that are not normally on these kind of figures. And then these dolls, just look at them, they're magnificent, and all of these have been handcrafted, and you can see that the bridal wear with this magnificent headgear that the bride wears, and her husband, of course. As well as these very beautiful adult dolls, there are other dolls of different scales, and the ones that I like are the little children dolls. They're amazing. If you look at this one here, this little boy, and he's got these lovely big feet, you know, and his felt clothes and this amazing warm hat from fur. You can see the kind of things. And in the old days, you know, Kazakh people used to dress their children in this way, especially, you can imagine, in the steppe in the winter, how cold it would be. And doesn't he look magnificent? Fantastic. Real mixture of craft stalls at this fair, and I like this particular one because there's all a mixture of different things that they create, like this recreation of the old style furniture that people used to have in their yurts with all of this carving on the front of them, to the more traditional kind of souvenir things, you know, like these boxes that are made of wood with a little bit of felt inside, and each one decorated with some kind of symbol of Kazakhstan. I've seen the apple of Almaty here. There are some of the rock drawings from the petroglyphic era from in the Almaty region, and then these souvenir style musical instruments. This is the kobiz. Of course, this is a souvenir, not a real instrument, but it's very, very nice, the kind of thing that you can take home with you, put on your wall, and it's very nicely carved, very nicely created for the souvenir industry. And of course, you know, for foreigners who come here who want to take a little bit of Kazakhstan back home with them after the end of their trip.
This craft fair, taking place in the foyer of the Almaty National Museum, has stalls arranged to look like an Eastern bazaar, with wares cascading down the staircase and creating a multicoloured pattern of clothing, carpets, felt items, wooden crafts, dolls, art and jewellery.
Here in the outskirts of Almaty, we've come across a place that might look like an open-air museum, but in actual fact, it's a working place where they're making these old weapons and restoring old weapons from Kazakhstan's history. This place is under the open sky, you get a fantastic atmosphere, it's not closed in at all, and here they're bringing back to life the ancient history of Kazakhstan and the kind of weapons and artifacts that they used centuries ago.
This entrepreneurial family of brothers have the trade in their blood, as it has been passed through the generations. They restore and supply weapons and other replica historic items for museums, the film industry and for private collections.
What I really like about this place is the fact that it's all been kept and preserved in the way that the craftsmen of centuries of the past would have worked themselves. There's nothing modern here. There's no modern equipment. You can see that the traditional blacksmith crafts have been preserved, and they're continuing to make these weapons in the same way that their predecessors would have done so many centuries ago. And you can see also the equipment. The equipment here is fantastic. This old anvil that stood on a tree stump, you know. There's the fire here, and these amazing bellows. They're incredible. Well, all of this equipment here is being used, as I say, in the way that it was in the past. And what's important is that the methods have been preserved as well. So these brothers have learned their craft from their predecessors, and they will pass these crafts on to their children and grandchildren. This display of just some of the weaponry that's been created in this workshop just gives you some idea of the cruelty and the difficulty that the Kazakh nation in the past had to face under the duress of the invasions from the Jungars and other people who wanted a part of the territory of Kazakhstan. Well, you can see there was a lot of imagination went into this, and a lot of very interesting weapons that they created. And I just can't imagine, this is so heavy, how difficult it must have been for these warriors to have wielded these very heavy weapons around while they were flying across the steppe on horseback, facing these invaders, and also trying not to get killed themselves. Well, the artwork in this weaponry is very interesting, in fact, and we can see it everywhere. Wherever you look, you can always find these signs that these are from Kazakhstan because of the various ornaments that are embossed or indeed inlaid into these weapons, like on this battle axe here, where you can see these very typical Kazakh emblems or symbols that have been inlaid into the head of this weapon very beautifully in silver. Well, also remember, these warriors were mainly on horseback. That was the way in which people got around at that time. And so there were bow weapons as well. And you can see there's a variety of different bows here, if I can show you, that have different heads on them that would inflict different kinds of damage depending on what they were shooting, whether they were shooting a horse or a person or whatever. And again, difficult to imagine when you can see this type of head here on that weapon. And this, of course, will be travelling at great speed and spinning at the same time. It would inflict an awful lot of damage. But, you know, the restorers here in this workshop don't just concentrate on weapons. Their mission here is to recreate the history of Kazakhstan today and to preserve it for the future. And that history isn't just about fighting and about weapons. So there are a few other things which I want to show you in this workshop.
The workshop is a treasure trove of interesting, unusual items which reflect different aspects of historic culture, from the weapons we've just seen to shields and suits of armour, and even more domestic items that would have been used by Kazakh families.
Some of these things that are not related to weaponry and war are very, very interesting indeed, and very beautiful, like this. It's just a piece of art, really. It's a little seat. You can use it at home or just admire it for its art. You can see again it's got all of these ornaments on it, and this thing for hanging clothes on, very colourful, very beautifully decorated, and of course very practical, so that when somebody comes home to the yurt, they don't have to throw their clothes on the floor, but they can hang them on something that looks very ornamental like that. A lot of these things that are used in yurts and in homes are actually very practical as well as being very decorative. But what I also like is the association with shamanism, and you can see this this beautiful looking piece of ornament there, again with all of these Kazakh style patterns etched onto it, and this shamanic drum here is all around the edge there. It's got horses on the pattern, it's got an eagle on the pattern, and it's got this never-ending, this sign of eternity that's there. And the paddle for beating the drum has similar ornaments there as well, a horse's tail, and it's all made of leather on which we can beat it. Well, as you can see, the handicrafts of Kazakhstan are very varied. There's a lot of them, and they're very skillful, these artisans, in what they're doing. And this gentleman here is making some clay pot work. Well, that's not all, of course, that we'll be showing you about Kazakhstan and about this city. There's much more to see, and I hope you'll join us again and discover it with me in Discovering Kazakhstan. Goodbye.